Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 7 of Ultimate Exotics, the review series for Gran Turismo 6's best of the best supercars. And in this particular episode, we're featuring what is in real life one of the best overall supercars ever made. Some people consider it to be the best supercar ever. Now I can understand why you'd say that. It's got the big numbers that you want from a supercar, but at the same time it offers the driving comfort and ease of use that many supercars specifically do not have. But on the game, those things don't mean very much. Ride comfort and having a leather interior means nothing on the racetrack. In fact, it does. It's a disadvantage because it adds weight. And the Veyron is pretty much the heaviest supercar in the game. Even with the full weight loss package, it still weighs over 1,400 kilos. However, the power to weight ratio is actually still very good, and the reason for that is because of how much sheer power it has. It actually produces 1,324 horsepower fully tuned, which means that it still has a massive power to weight ratio of 942 horsepower per tonne. Incidentally, it also puts out a massive 1,109 pound-feet of torque, which is pretty much the highest of the supercar class, and one of the highest torque outputs in the game in general. Ironically, it's actually not the most torque of any supercar in the game. That actually goes to the Citroën GT concept, which is pretty ironic considering that that's an electric car. But the Veyron is known, of course, for being fast, more than anything else in a straight line. And it's also known for not being the best handling of supercars. Now, strictly speaking, that's not really accurate, because the handling is actually quite good. It's quite easy to drive and remarkably forgiving for a car with so much power, but it's understandable what people mean by that. You just can't use all of that power, especially on tracks that require anything more than 2 corners. The fact that it has so much weight and such a grippy all-wheel drive system, which is great in real life but can be a hindrance on the game because it creates understeer, mean that on most tracks, to be brutally honest, even supercars with far less on-paper spec can absolutely wipe the floor with the Veyron. Now, the Veyron can of course be tuned to be better around corners rather than straight lines, but there's only so far tuning can go. You can't turn a car into something that it's not just by changing settings. Now, some people may believe that you can, but what I mean by that is, this is a 703 pp car. And at that level, you can literally get a nearly fully tuned Le Mans prototype. And I don't care how you tune your Veyron, you're not going to set a lap anywhere near a Group C car. It's just not physically possible. So, for overall competitiveness, the Veyron falls well short of the mark on most tracks. But within the supercar category, it's a different story, because obviously they're not fully fledged racing machines like Le Mans cars are. And the huge power and torque and straight line performance of the Veyron do work to its advantage compared to many of its rivals. However, there are very few tracks where you can genuinely pull out the Veyron for good reason. Now, you may pull out the Veyron on certain tracks just because you like the car, but there are very few tracks where the Veyron would dominate, because vehicles like the McLaren F1, the TVR Speed 12, etc., offer very similar levels of usable performance to the Veyron, but without the excess weight and extreme understeer. So the Veyron it's kind of a quandary, really, because it offers everything you could possibly want from a supercar, but at the same time loses to pretty much every other supercar around the track, which is ironic. For sheer performance, obviously, it's a monster, 310 miles per hour or more, even without NOS or draft, acceleration off the line, which is almost unbeatable. It's a monster in a straight line, no doubt about that. But around the track, it's just not what you'd think. Now, in real life, of course, around the Top Gear track, for instance, it was pretty quick. But it wasn't tuned, and neither were any of its rivals. On the game, you can tune virtually any supercar to be at the equal level of a Veyron around corners, if not better. So it's kind of hard for this review to be positive when it's hard to be. Because although I definitely don't hate the Veyron, I like the car, but the fact is it's just not as good as you'd think. It's just too heavy, too clumsy, too cumbersome around corners to be genuinely effective on most tracks. So unless you're just a huge fan of the car anyway, regardless of what it's like to drive, and I can understand that, there are cars that I'm like that with, but unless you're that kind of person, I would only recommend buying the Veyron if you plan on doing a lot of drag racing, special stage Route X racing, or perhaps racing on tracks such as here at Monza or on La Sarthe. Apart from that, there are just far better machines that you can get for the money. Now, if you're looking for a car with just ridiculous numbers across the board, of course the Veyron gives you that. 8 litres, 16 cylinders, 4 turbos, 1300 horses, etc. It's a monster of sheer numbers. But if you're looking for a competitive track machine, it's a bit too civilised for that, to be honest. So, kind of a controversial review, or potentially so, and it's definitely not a bad car, and I don't want people to get the wrong impression of the Veyron when so many people already consider it to be a bad car, which it certainly isn't. But that's it for this review. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.